Bruce, how you doing, buddy?
How are you doing, Rob? Long time. How are you doing? Are you okay?
I am less hairy here, more hairy here.
Yeah.
And feeling excited to speak to you for the first time in ages.
Yes, it's a bit of a beard reversal situation.
Yeah, it really is.
It's we miss you in Brighton. I miss the coffee mornings and all that we could do pre-lockdown and when you were in Brighton, but it's brilliant to be able to keep in touch like this.
Yeah, man. I miss, well, I can't really say that I miss English coffee because although it's pretty good, the coffee in Malta, just below Sicily, is pretty outstanding. So I think I've leveled up my coffee situation, but I do miss hanging with you guys.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we got to do a bit of it before I left.
Yes, really, really great. And I think the last time I saw you was at the Clockwork Wolf show in Brighton, in the good old days when we were able to do gigs.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I got to actually play a gig before I had to leave the UK because, you know, it's the one thing that I think I miss the most out of everything that goes on now is interaction with people and playing live. And of course, I mean, I played a gig literally days before I left the UK and I have that memory still in my mind. And you know, it was a really great thing to have been involved in, you know, before I left. So I'm grateful for that.
You know, that's what we want to talk about today. We're really starting to look ahead now. And it's all about getting back to work. And there's all sorts of green shoots and there's all sorts of challenges and all sorts of opportunity. And I wanted to talk to you today, Rob, if it's cool, about this this idea that we've been asked all the time, should musicians retrain? And the reason it's such a hot topic is the UK government, they put out a couple of statements to that effect. And it caused a massive controversy in the UK. And also it caused a lot of us to really question the future of a musician's career and a creative career. And the interesting thing here is, I don't think it's a black and white answer. You know, it's quite an interesting subject. So, are you up for talking about that?
Absolutely. And I think, to be honest with you, as a guy who has had to leave a country, set up an entirely new life, and go through a process of retraining myself to deal with, you know, plagued pandemic planet Earth, it's almost the perfect time to talk about that.
Well, also, it's a bit of a red herring, this, because I think that thinking musicians, you know, we've been retraining for a long time now. It's just part of what we do. And we all end up with a portfolio career. So that's a posh way of saying it's like a pizza, and each of the slices is an income stream. So Tom, for example, who's filming this for us today at our end, Tom's a professional drummer. But one of the things he does is art and content making, video shooting and editing. And that's just the way it is for all of us now. And people forget, you know, before COVID, we had the situation where in 1999 the music industry peaked and we were still selling CDs, huge markup.
Remember those?
Yeah, but it was like printing money. You know, you could make a CD for about 25p and the labels were selling it somewhere between 15 quid, 16, 17 quid. It was like an industrial money printing machine, and this was 25, 26 billion worldwide on the physical stuff. And then by 2005 it gone, music became free. So it's not the first time we've had a kind of scorched earth situation and we've had to reinvent ourselves. And I think that's when we started the training thing. And if you look at your career, I think that was a big driver to you taking the direction perhaps you did 10, 15 years ago.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, when I started doing YouTube, it's because I saw, to quote you, the bones of the river. I could see what it was going to become, what it was going to turn into. And I think I realized early on that YouTube was going to be something really important, or social media in general was going to be something really important for me. So I formed a band, left the band and focused on YouTube and kind of sat there for years and years trying to work out what YouTube was whilst being in a band. And I think it taught me a lot. And recently, all of the change of 2020, it's been a horrible situation for many people, but in some regards, for my career, it's been almost a blessing in disguise. It has forced me to focus, to learn, to play more, and to put my attention much more on my creativity and how I can turn that into, ultimately, enjoyment and money. And so I am kind of, it's one of those horrible balancing situations where I have friends and family who have suffered terribly from this whole situation. But online entertainment, engagement is way up. Music sales are way up. There's a lot to be harvested there and learned from there. So it's a really, man, what an interesting year to kind of live through. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's been particularly hard on some people, but in other areas there has been growth, even through COVID. And I've known old school musicians from my generation who are suddenly doing really well on Patreon, and even Bandcamp is working really well for a lot of people. And it's an environment that's suiting people who search out that innovation. And the exciting thing is there are the green shoots now. Obviously there's the news about the vaccine, which seems quite credible. And there's festivals, there's Arctangent, one of our festivals that we work with, and many others launching and being confident about 21. So you can feel the whole industry on the brink of getting back to work. And I think now's the time as individuals to go, right, what part can I play in this regeneration? And I find it incredibly exciting. Although it's been super tough and still is in many ways, a lot of the older school generation of music industry professionals, they are retiring. And I hear a lot of talk in live music about, wasn't it great in the 90s? Well, yeah, it was, man, but it's not the 90s now. And it can still be great now, but let's look at what we can do. And that stuff is going to come from younger people doing things differently.
Yeah. I've talked a lot about, in my life, whenever I've come against an obstacle, whether it be emotional, mental, physical, fiscal, whatever it is, a lot of people will go up to this obstacle and go, well, I can't do it, and they're stuck. And I've always just gone around it and done the thing that I could do. And when I realised that finance was going to go down, Brexit was happening, that's a big, difficult situation for lots of people. A lot of my friends had to leave England. In fact, my social media manager was told, get out. So it really impacted me and a lot of my friends. And so one of the first things I did was obviously come to Malta, and now I'm officially a Maltese citizen through marriage. And that's given me the big old European ticket, which was really helpful. But just as an example of a list, I could almost have written a list of things I needed to go and learn. This video that we're doing now, I'm filming it on my new iPhone.
Right.
I have lit it with light outside of the room to avoid the reflections behind me from this console room. I am recording it through means that I've had to learn recently, different setup. To be able to see if my iPhone is still recording, I have a mirror behind my iPhone. I am listening to you down here on FaceTime. I've never had to do this kind of thing really pre-COVID. When have we had to film remotely and have conversations like this remotely? It is such an interesting thing. And yeah, there's a little tiny bit of lag sometimes, and a little bit of glitch here and there. But this experience has taught me that there are all sorts of ways around problems.
Yes, and what you've just described there is the secret to a music career and a career in the music industry. People are always asking, where do I find a manager? Where do I get my record deal? It's all nonsense, because you can grow your audience. You can get hold of any of those people. If you want to know who runs what label or manages what bands, you can get hold of them now, because information's all out there. So there's nothing stopping us apart from that you describe, which is if you get an obstacle, if you stop, that's the end of your career. But people who do well, they go around it if you can't go around it, to go over it, and if it all else fails, you dig a hole and you bloody well go underneath it, you know. And what I love about now and today is we're faced with that every day. So there's a lot of manoeuvring and thinking, and that's why it's so exciting, because young people are good at it. And that's why my son's a professional in music professionally. I feel better about him being involved in professional music in 2020 than any time in the 80s or 90s.
Well, I'll tell you what, here's one big change. People for a whole year have not really been able to go and see a live performance. There have been some.
Yeah.
In fact, in Malta, a few of my friends still go out and they play social distanced events. But it's really just been switched off, yeah? So, I mean, everyone is desperate to go and see a live performance. And we know it's going to come back probably I've been booked for festivals mid-21, so a few. So I'm imagining a lot of the industry feels mid-21 onwards is where that's going to happen. How big is live going to be when it comes back? You know, if you remove ice cream from planet Earth and then wait a year and then say, here's an ice cream, everybody wants ice cream.
Everyone wants ice cream. It's like bananas in the war.
I think live music will get a big resurgence, and it's really going to help our industry.
Well, I know a little bit about this because in the middle of COVID, we invested in a 10-year lease in a venue in Brighton Seafront. So you'll know it as the Funky Buddha probably, Rob, and we're going to change the name. And we're probably the only people on the planet who was investing in a venue at that time. But this is the time to take those risks and do that stuff. And of course, we're monitoring now because we've got to put a PA system into it. So it's probably, 30 grand plus to get the PA system we want. Wow. And I'm thinking, well, the Great Escape looks like it's going to be active in Brighton. That's the world's second biggest music kind of get together really after South by Southwest in Texas, in Austin. And so the Great Escape look like they're confidently going to be going in May. And do we need our venue ready for then? Yeah, we probably do. So certainly by the back end of September sort of time, I think we're going to be back to it. The problem though is all the gigs that got postponed from 2019 have kind of, they're going to have to get done. So the slots for the new bands is going to be a little bit tricky for a couple of years, but that's one of the reasons we're having this venue, so we can actually be a platform for new and emerging music. But again, most festivals these days have those stages for emerging acts, and there's always these opportunities and chances if you look for them.
Yeah, you know what? It's I was going to say it's funny, but it's not funny. It's so fortunate that Water Bear was set up with an online focus and a social media focus pre-COVID.
Well, yeah.
You were designed to survive, and we were talking about how to survive change.
Yeah.
And then look what happened. Massive dramatic change.
Well, we didn't expect the model to be tested in this kind of dramatic way, but I remember about a year ago I did this TED talk where I said education's got to change, because driving to the university in Hull or somewhere to study in one particular room, it's like driving to Scotland to watch somebody else's Netflix. Education should be free and working around your life. And so I was going on about this stuff, but I didn't expect COVID to come along. And but when we shut the college and had to go all online, all the content was there. So, but I think with online learning, people would talk about it a lot. I don't think that's the thing. I think it's hybrid learning, and it's learning on site. It's learning online, but it's also learning on the job, the work-based learning element, And I think that is the real world aspect. It should be as much part of your education. And I always have this bugbear with any degree. Don't teach anyone anything till you know what they're already doing. And let's have a look at that first, and then we join the dots and fill in the gaps, So yeah, it's exciting times, but not easy, because Waterbear's a startup. And it wasn't ideal having COVID in the middle of a startup. No. But since I spoke to you last, the University of Falmouth have partnered up and they've actually bought part of Water Bear. So I'm very proud that they are a co-owner of the college, and I think that's a shared investment in this type of education and also creative careers, because I believe it's like a housing crash. There's always a boom after a crash. Very interesting statistics. We should share this link, Rob. UK Music, which are a research, they do this amazing research every year, and they've issued their report for 2019, so just up to COVID. And once again, there's more than 10% year-on-year growth. This is in the UK. UK Music produces nearly 6 billion for the UK economy, 5.8 billion. Nearly 3 billion is exports, and on top of that, there's another 5 billion on music tourism, which is people coming into the country watching gigs. You know, so we were flying before COVID, and this is the frustrating thing, because politicians have never understood creatives. And I think they think we're a sort of liberal ground for kind of woolly thinking and lying about. And actually, you know, we're in a very competitive industry, so we're all pretty industrious these days. And it's a little bit nuts. We've had some good stuff. There's been some investment in the venues to keep them afloat. It's been a bit inconsistent, but at least it's been there. I mean, it's kept the Green Door store going in Brighton, the Concord going, Chalk, Small Pond. So there's been some very, very helpful grant funding, but it's been very patchy for individual musicians. And this is a worldwide thing. I think we've had different levels of support. It feels like in the States it's quite sink or swim. My friends in Austin, Texas are telling me that it's been incredibly hard for venues and musicians out there. Have you got any feedback on that from your Chapman endorsees or anything?
The feedback online from musicians, people that are endorsed by Chapman guitars, or just friends, followers, is that everyone's kind of hibernating.
You're right.
They've all written off 2020, and they're all kind of finding a way to reduce costs, in some cases moving back with parents or whatever it takes, you know, anything they can do to shave off expense. But I think there's also been a realization that now is the time to write music, to harvest anything you can turn into content, and put out there, and to really prepare for halfway through 21, because we know that what we can do at home is we can write and we can record if we're set up and we've got the gear. So personally speaking, I have written and recorded 2 EPs while I've been kind of in lockdown or semi-lockdown in Malta, one of which launches in February, one that comes out in April, and then I've got a Christmas single coming out as well, because I could do it, so it made sense. You know, Zach, my buddy in New York, he left New York. He's been writing and writing for months and months in a project of his own. Just all of my friends have been sat at home writing music, trying to get, you know, to turn all of this pain and suffering into a catharsis, and creating content, making music to deal with it. Because you know what people want when they're locked down? Ice cream, you know, crisps, Netflix, music. They want to be entertained. They need their brains to be happy, and they want to have something in front of them they can listen to or watch. So it's about using this time to go inward, to create music, and to learn the tools that will enable you to do that. So I've been really focused on learning how to record vocals, because Clockwork Wolf and Company, my band, the main musicians are based in England. They're recording bass and drums, and my producer's over there, and then I'm recording guitar and vocals remotely. Now, I've recorded guitars remotely loads of times, but never had to track my own vocals remotely. And I've had to find how I best do that, the environment to get my motivation up, because I'm doing it on my own. That might sound like a weird thing, but actually recording vocals on your own, it's a little bit daunting sometimes. I'm used to a person being in the room going, that was good, do another take, you can do better, you know, pushing you. You have to do that yourself.
Really interesting, Rob. And essentially, I think we've only really got one problem. So long as we're lucky enough to remain healthy and those around us, and, you know, our main problem is managing our own psychology and creating that self-motivation. But we are built for it. And as well as that 2005 period when music became free, previous to that, we were enormously subject to fashion changes. So people forget Motorhead, legendary band, T-shirts in Topshop, all the rest of it. In the grunge era, they could barely play a pub gig. And everyone should read Lemmy's book, White Lines, because it's his biography. Sometimes Motorhead was just him in a room, out of fashion, couldn't get an interview. So there was Bill, another guy from that era, Biff Byford from Saxon, gave me this piece of advice. He always calls me young'un, and he says, "You listen to me, young'un." He says, comes from up north, and he says, "When you're hot, tour. When you're not, write songs." And I think the message for today is: when you're hot, tour. When you're not, write songs, but also train, learn new stuff.
In other words, do what you can do. Don't sit back and do nothing and just turn off to it. And you know what? Never before have I had to focus so much on my own mental health.
Yeah.
I have needed to put in my calendar, take an hour off, walk through a forest.
Yeah.
Take an hour off, have a cup of tea and breathe. It's been really hard. And I, to an extent, had it easier because I could come to a different country where things were a lot better with COVID. I had a place to live, finances easier for me here. My family can rest. But even through all that, I had to move into a little flat, and I'm a musician, I'm loud, and I have a baby and a 3-year-old. So working in that environment is very difficult. And I was finding stress. And then my parents would get ill and I'm worried. And then my granny gets ill and she's in hospital right now and I'm worried about her. And one of my friends got COVID and then another friend got COVID. And so it all builds up. And before you know it, wearing a mask is normal. And then that makes you feel strange. So I took time to focus on my mental health. And I think now is the time that people need to realise that shouldn't just be a 2020 thing. That should be an ongoing thing for every creative person who probably, like me, takes the negative, bad things and transforms it into content. I don't know what you think about that.
I think you're spot on with that observation. Same for me personally, putting time into that. And that should be part of our training, I think, because, and again, I come back to my point, we've only got one problem in life, which is managing our own psychology, getting out of bed and having that I can do this, I can overcome these obstacles feeling, rather than that kind of slight or extreme despair, and that is practice. We all practice guitar, and for me it's meditation. That's what really works. But for someone else, I also do my fishing, as you know, but for someone else it might be mountain biking, or it might be just jamming, But we've got to allocate that into our training, and the more we practice it, just like our scales, you can practice happiness. There's some great books. I mean, the one that changed my life was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. But everyone's different, so you've got to find your own path. But you're right, this is a big priority now.
It really is. Yeah, and something I would encourage the students at Waterbear to consider is that meditation, and I really mean this, meditation can be as long as just one breath. If you've got 5 seconds, you can breathe in and you can breathe out. And that can be a short, tiny, microscopic meditation, but it makes the world of difference. It really does. If you realise that you can just take 5 seconds to breathe in and breathe out and stop, turn your brain off, and then carry on, it will reset you. Because everything we have is in here, yeah? That's everything in your world. And the secret is to not let anybody else in. Yeah, we control, our reaction. Yeah, our reaction to events is our control. And you won't believe what it'll do for your guitar playing if you sort your breathing out, as we've talked about a lot, I'm just writing a module for the degree, it's called My Strategy, and it's about that pie chart, putting together your own pie chart, and I'm weaving the well-being stuff into this module, because unless you're well and happy, you can't really take advantage of all these opportunities. And the more well you are, the better, the more you can contribute to the other people and the music community as well. So it's important for those around us as well as ourselves. Yeah. I was thinking before this call, because I knew the topic we were going to talk about, and I was thinking about a list of things that I had to learn this year that I never knew I would need to learn. Now, I obviously had done a lot of video editing before. I had never really done a lot of music recording. I had dabbled. I could record a track, but I had never really fully immersed myself in it because I didn't have to. And I'd never really immersed myself in Photoshop because I didn't have to. And I think this year meant that I had to. And I think it might be a really good idea for students to imagine that they have to know how to mic up an amp, how to mic themselves up, how to track a drum, how to track a bass, how to get a DI, all these little things that you kind of put off because you don't have to know it. I think from now on, I would very much like my attitude to be, I have to know it so that, and, my future is easier.
And I always say, sometimes it is hard to get there on your own. And YouTube and online stuff, sometimes you need the human thing to sort of help you make sense of all this stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate, I am planning on being back in the UK in January because I've got to go to Andertons and film some more stupid videos with Lee and Pete and Beer. And I'm going to hopefully be there for about a week. So if I am, and you're around, let's get coffee and shoot a video in the same space. I shadow follow a lot of the students from Waterbow. I kind of keep a tab on what they're doing, have a little look and sort of peek in. And it's inspiring and it's positive to see people releasing singles, working on their own music and being proud of their accomplishments.
We're so proud of these guys and the way they've kind of, they've battled through and they're making progress. And I think the work that we put in now defines our future.
Yeah, that really does. It's true. Yeah. And also, if you shave your hair off, it costs you less on getting haircuts. That's my COVID COVID tip for you.
Yes, this is a COVID number 3.
I never have a bad hair day now, mate.
No, my wife did this one for me this morning, especially for your filming.
We've probably been like 4 hours now. Should we wrap up?
Yeah, that's great. I think we covered loads of brilliant stuff, Rob. I hope I didn't yak on. I just found this subject quite interesting, so I hope I didn't yak on too much.
Well, I'll tell you what, post-Christmas, if we meet up in January, we can do a rejig on this and go, what else happened over Christmas?
Yeah.
Biggest music sales time of the year, and it'll just be fun to get a tea and chill.
Amazing, and maybe we should talk about the new record deal you've done and all that, because that's interesting.
Yes. All right, bro. Take it easy, mate.
See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.